Hello again, this is SickleYield. Today I'm going to talk to you about how to make lots of thumbnails and tips relatively quickly. This is something that applies more to content creators than to the average user, but if you make a lot of your own materials or presets, this might still be of use to you. So before I get started, I'm going to talk about the programs that I'm using for this today because a lot of them are outside of DAZ Studio or are purchased add-ons. Usually inexpensively. This is Thumb Renderer for DAZ Studio by the late Dimension 3D or Ralph Sessler. It is currently $11 on Renderosity. It says on the page that it doesn't work above version 4.9, but that's actually incorrect. I'm using it in 4.20 and it still works. I'm using this because it has my favorite interface of the thumbnail programs that I've tried, but you can also, in the DAZ 3D store, get the program Thumbnail Mastery, made by Dragonstorm. It is currently on sale for $8, which is a good price. I won't be going over that one because I could not figure out how to make it do what I wanted. This is my fault for not taking the time to read all of the documentation before making this tutorial. So it's entirely possible that this will work for all of you. So I'm putting that here as an option. I'm going to use the Batch Manipulator plugin for my 2D program, the GIMP, that I use for most of my 2D editing and some light texturing. I do a lot of my texturing in 3D programs now, but when I have 2D things I need to do, which is often, I use the GIMP. It's free, it has a lot of features, and using this plugin, I'm going to be speeding up my thumbnail process by quite a lot. So this is the plugin, BIMP, or Batch Image Manipulator, and it is also free, and it's not too hard to install. Just make sure that you get the installer that's right for your operating system. You also do need to read the install instructions for Thumb Renderer because Thumb Renderer is a plugin for DAZ Studio, but it's not that hard to install and it's very easy to use. So we've got Thumb Renderer or Thumbnail Mastery, the GIMP, the Batch Image Manipulator for the GIMP. If you use a different 2D program, such as Photoshop, you might be able to get a Batch Manipulator for that too. I'm sure there is one. And finally, I'm going to use the free program Lupa's Rename, which is also, again, free. Here's the website for it. You can donate to the maker of it if you like. I recommend it because this is a very simple, easy to use, and very useful program. It looks a little outdated in terms of the interface, but it is a fantastic and very useful program. So now that I've talked about the programs I'm going to use, let's go on to our process. All right, here I have my testers for my scene. There's Genesis 8 female, and here's Genesis 8 male, currently hidden. They're both wearing the Geoshell from the Seraphine set. The UV on that is not perfect for him, but I wanted them to look relatively the same. And I also wanted to not use my entire content directory where the UV switcher is. So for now, we're going with that. I've created a small freebie, the free magic ball. Just made this morning. Most of my products that I make that are magic products have some kind of small ball in them that can be held in the hand, so I'm going to work with that today. And the ball itself is just, here's the centered version, looks like that. The mesh is very simple. I'm going to set it to lit wireframe here for a second so you can see it's just a couple of flat planes. Now, a lot of my products involve some kind of small item that's held in the hand or attached to the body somewhere, and then a lot of poses and wearables presets for that item. It's one of my core businesses. It's a lot of what I do when I'm not doing utilities. So in this case, I've got the centered sphere there, but I also have a left hand wearable that loads into her hand and poses her hand, and a right hand wearable that loads into her right hand and poses her right hand. And I've also got those for Genesis 8 male in their own separate folder structure here. So what I'm going to do here is first I'm going to show you how I'm going to manually render an icon the slow way, and I'm going to do that with the centered ball here. I'm going to hide my female tester group. I'm going to click on it in the Scene tab, and I'm going to click on this little square with the plus sign in it that centers my view on the ball. Now I have created this scene. It has no other lights than the environment lights. I have a default camera. I've turned off the headlamp because if you have glowing objects in your scene, the headlamp's really going to mess with those. In fact, it's going to mess with your lighting in general, so always turn off the headlamp, unless you're just using it for testing. The environment is just set to 1. The tone mapping is standard. I have set the dimension preset to square because this is going to be for our icons, okay? And we're ready to go there. And then I'm going to set the pixel size to 256 by 256. The reason I'm going to do this is because right now DAZ requires that you render not just a 91 by 9 pixel icon, but also a 256 by 256 pixel tip. And the tip image is just a larger image so that when the user hovers over it, they get a better view of what the thumbnail represents. So the slow way to do this is I'm going to right-click on my item that I'm rendering, choose Rename, and hit Control-C to copy that name. I'm just going to paste that over into my Render Settings tab under Image Name. It's set to PNG. And I'm going to name it .tip after the name Free Magic Ball Center. And then I'm going to navigate my image path to that same folder where I want the icon to go. And then I'm going to hit Control-R and it'll start rendering. And there's my tip image. And I'll hit Save. And then I'm just going to backspace and remove the .tip from it and change my size to 91 and hit render again. And now I have that. So when I refresh over here on the left in my content library, I can right click and hit refresh. And now you can see that icon. And when I hover over it, you can see the tip image, which has more detail. So that's just fine. Doesn't take very long at all. The only problem that we have with that is when I have, say, 20 props and 80 poses. I just did a set with 80 poses in it. And 80 poses means that I need 160 images. And usually I'm going to have to redo those 160 images because the poses need to look different on the male character. In this case, I will show you what I do to flip left side, right side and avoid doing quite as many images here. So I'm going to click on my left-hand preset I made for Genesis 8 Female. I'm going to repeat that copy-paste process and .tip and 256. And I'm just going to click on her left hand here and hit the little plus sign. Now in close-up, when the male and female have the same clothes on and have the base textures, the hands aren't really distinct from each other. You wouldn't be able to tell at the icon or the tip size that this is the female hand versus the male hand. So I'm probably going to use the same icon for both in that case and just copy them. I'm going to render my tip. And render my icon. Actually, no, I'm going to cancel that. I'm not going to render the icon because that's part of what we're going to be showing you here. So the first step in this process is that I render all my left side things. I also have a full body wearables. So I'm going to click on that wearables preset for my left side. And I'm going to do a render of that for my icon and tip for Genesis 8 Female here. And once again, I paste into the image name, rename it to tip, size it to 256, render that. Now, what I'm going to end up with here is that I have the two left side images, and I have them at size 256. When I reload, you can't see them because it only sees the 91 by 91 image as the thumbnail. But if you hover over those left images, you can see the images that I've rendered. So this isn't a problem to do this very quickly with just this small number of icons, but when I have a large number of icons, it can take hours and hours. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to open up the GIMP, the GNU Image Manipulator, drag that over here, And having installed the batch manipulator, when I click on File, here's Batch Image Manipulation. And I'm going to click on that plugin. Now I have some options here, and the one I'm going to choose first is Manipulation Set. I'm going to choose Resize. This is going to generate my icons, and I'm going to set it to PX and 91 for both of these. That's 91 pixels. And OK. And now I've got the manipulation set here of resizing whatever I choose to size 91 by 91. I'm going to go to Add Images and add single images. And then I'm just going to navigate to the location of that. Back to my G8F folders. Here we go. And you can see my tip pings there. So I'm actually going to go ahead and select all of those, even though I already rendered the Free Magic Balls tip and ping. And I'm just going to add. Now you can see the list here on the input files. Now this over here, the output folder, is also important. I'm going to click on where it just says sickle yield right now because it'll just render to the C users folder in Windows. So instead of that, I'm going to create a specific folder for my icons under my magic ball. And it'll be temporary. I will definitely delete it when I'm done. I'm just going to call it B. And so I'm going to select that. The purpose here is that I don't overwrite anything. And then I'm just going to click Apply. And now in this folder over here, I can see that it's going to be gradually taking those images and resizing them. There we go. Now I have 91 by 91 images, but all of those images are named tip ping. Again, manually renaming them is easy when I only have 3 like this, but when I have a list of 80, that's going to take quite a long time. So this is where Lupa's Renamer comes in. I'm going to click on LR on my little taskbar here because I have saved it to the taskbar because I use it so much. And under Lupa's Renamer, I'm just going to scroll back to my working directory. And my B folder, there we go. You can see that those are all named tip.tip.ping, so I'm going to go down here and click Replace the Text, and I'm just going to type .tip, no spaces, and then I'm going to go to the right to where it says with this new text and backspace. And up here, you can see that I have a preview. It says only rename the selected files right now, and if I uncheck that, it will do it to all of them. So as you can see, it's going to rename all of those to .ping. So I'm going to rename that like so. And now I have 3 91 by 91 ping files that I can take back here and paste. And those will become my icons. So when I go back to DAZ Studio and refresh on that directory, now I have icons. Again, that didn't save me time when I'm just doing 2 or 3 of them, but it will save a lot of time when you have 80 of them in the same folder. And once again, I can do this to make right and left versions. I will go back to the GIMP and start up the batch image manipulator. This time, for my manipulation set, I will use flip or rotate. Click on that. And I'm just going to click where it says horizontally and OK. And then I will go back and add images again. And this time, when I do that, I'm going to go to that folder and click on all of my left images, stance left and left hand, my tips and my pings. And I'm going to add those. Now there they are. And I can go back to my B folder and select it. And we're ready to go, so I'm just going to click Apply. If it finds something to overwrite, it will ask me if it wants me to overwrite. That should pop up here in just a second as it realizes there are things with the same name in the folder. There we go. overwrite it, and I'm going to say always apply because I'm in the B folder, not in the main folder, and click yes. And it's just going to work on that for a second as it flips those 4 files. If you create the pings from the tips first, then you can just flip all of them at the same time. Very easy. And that's done, so I'm going to click close. And we're going to go back to Lupa's Renamer again. And since we're still in that B folder, I'll just hit refresh. And there are my left folders. I don't actually need the magic ball one, so I'm not going to change that one. I'm just going to select these 4, go back to only rename the selected files and check that. Then I'm going to go to replace the text and replace left with right. And rename. Now, when I go back to that folder in Windows, I can go to my B folder, and there are my 4 right-hand icons, which are now flipped. And I can copy those and paste them into my main folder. And it will not overwrite my left-hand ones because it's been renamed. So now when I go back to DAZ Studio and refresh, now everything's filled in left and right. Okay, so that can save you just a tremendous amount of time if you're making a lot of presets, which I'm often going to be doing for a magic set. Now that brings us to dealing with lots of material icons, and that's where our thumb render program comes in. In order to start batch rendering my thumbnails, using Thumb Render, I'm going to make sure that I have the add-on activated. So I'm going to go to Help, About Installed Plugins, and scroll down here until I find, scrolling, Thumb Renderer, and that's checked. So we're good. I'm good to go. I've created a tab for it here, which you can do by right-clicking and add pane tab, and it will show up in this list if you have it installed. So Thumb Render. So that's where the tab is. And then I'm going to go back to my magic ball and click on my centered one. Left click on that in the scene. Click on the little plus sign with a square around it to center on that in the frame. I'm still using my black background square here, so I'm good to go on that. Now this scene is going to serve as my thumbnail scene. When I tell Thumb Renderer to apply materials to this, it will just keep applying them here, and it will keep adding icons to the folder that the presets are in. So if I go to Thumb Render, click on Add, and navigate to my Materials folder under my free magic ball, I can left click, scroll down, shift and left click again, and it will select and open all of these material presets. There you can see the list of all my material presets. There's quite a few of them here, so it would probably take me a little while to render all of those thumbnails and pings. So the first thing I'm going to do is go down here to the bottom and put .tip. I'm going to say don't reset because I just want it to keep applying materials repeatedly to this object. And I'm going to set my size to 256. So now I've told Thumb Renderer to apply all of these presets to the thing I have selected in the scene and add .tip to all of their names and to size the files to 256. I'm also going to make sure that I have the materials folder selected in my render settings. I'm not 100% sure if Thumb Render checks that or not, but in case it does. And then I'm just going to hit render. Sometimes, depending on the number of presets that I have, I will actually let Thumb Render just then do the 91 by 91s as well. In this case, I want to use the batch manipulator again, just to firmly fix in our minds that that's a possibility. So I'm going to let it render all of these tips on its own. You can see it's applying materials in my viewport over here as it goes. It applies a material, then it renders, then it applies another material, then it renders. And it just goes right on down my list. And it's just going to keep on doing that through all of my different materials. So I'm going to pause recording until it is done. Okay, it's all done rendering my tips. And if I go to the materials folder and hit refresh and hover over them, I can see those tips. There's no icons because we haven't got the icons yet, but I'm going to go back to the new image manipulator, the GIMP, restart my batch manipulation, use a manipulation set of resize, so add resize, and we're going to click on the px for both of those, meaning pixels, and set our width and height to 91 by 91, and just click OK. There's my manipulation set, and then I'm going to go to add images again. And this time, actually, I'm going to cancel that. This time I can actually add the entire materials folder. So I'm going to choose Add Folders, and just click on that materials folder. There we go. And add. Now I've just got all of those tips there. And for my output folder, I'm going to use that B folder I created again. Since I am going to need to rename all of these after they are batch rendered. And I'm just going to click Apply and let it run. Okay, it's all done now. It took about 3 minutes, which is longer than I could do it manually or render all of those. So I'm just going to close my batch manipulator and pop up my B folder here so you can see all my cute little icons. And then I'm going to go back to Lupa's Renamer, and I'm going to open my materials folder, not my materials folder, actually my B folder, because that's where these are right now, because they're all still named .tip.ping. So I'm going to go back to replace the text, click on that to check it, and click .tip and replace it with nothing. And you can see over here in the preview pane on the right what it's going to look like. So I'm just going to click on rename. And I love this program so much. It's almost instantaneous. So I can just close that. There's these. And I can select them all and cut. And go back to my materials folder and paste. Nothing overwrote because we gave them all correct names now. So I can go back to DAZ Studio and hit the refresh button, and now I can see all of my icons, and if I hover, I can see all of my tips. So that's how we do it. That can save a lot of time. And just one final thing here. If you're creating a wearables item with a prop in it for Genesis 8 female and Genesis 8 male, sometimes now DAZ is asking us to duplicate them. Instead of, I used to just make a props folder, and under props I would then have G8F and G8M folders, but they've been asking me to do that where I go to the People Genesis 8 female props folder, and then the product, and then the items, and duplicate that. So that means that I need to have both the base prop and the materials in both folders. So in order to save file size, we can create what's known as an asset link. So for the base prop itself, the centered wall, I'm going to right-click on that and choose Create Link for Asset. And it will ask what the product is that I want the asset for. So I have to navigate back through my folders to my Magic Ball, and I'm just going to click on Select because it will actually create one in this same folder, as I'm going to show you here momentarily. Yep, if I look in the folder, there's this file called duff.djl, and if I cut that and paste it over to the mail folder, from the folder perspective, it just looks like a DJL with nothing else there. But if I go to the mail folders here and refresh in my scene, now I can see the icon and the tip, and I can load that into the scene from that folder too. And I've created a smaller file size, and I don't have to duplicate all those icons, etc. So I'm also going to do that in the materials folder. I'm going to left click and hold shift and left click on the bottom left, and then right click and choose Create Links for Assets. And I'm just going to do that same thing again. Navigate to my Free Magic Ball folder and select, and then it basically instantaneously creates all of those in the G8F material folder. So then I'll go to there, and I'm just going to do a search materials for DJL so I can do a cut paste easily. There's all my folders, sorry, all of my files. Just click and cut, and go back to the G8M folders and their material folder and paste. So now when I'm looking at it in the program, all of those links show up as matte presets here, and I can click on them and it will load the preset that's in the female folders. So very quick, very easy. Don't have to redo icons or anything like that. Just uses, you don't have to duplicate the icons, it just uses the same ones. And the link is a smaller file than redoing the material is. So now my product is complete. I have icons for everything, I have tip pings for everything, and I have DJL links for everything. So my product, or my freebie in this case, is all ready to go. That's the workflow that I'm using right now. There are other programs you can use. All of them, I'm sure, are completely valid. This is just one way that you can do it, and I hope that at least it will create a jumping off point for those of you that are new vendors or are thinking of becoming vendors. So thank you very much for watching, and happy rendering!